It's really more important to try out the ideas and fail and then move on than not move forward at all. Because I probably spent a couple days just like paralyzed. I think I was just lying on my bed and just like, I don't know what to do. I'm so scared of failing. I have to really pick a direction and just put all my faith in it. Hi, my name is Jane. I am a data visualization designer based in Toronto, and this is Jane's Design Process. This is a series where I document my process on building a print product that I want to sell on the market. Previously on last week's episode, I explored how I start a new project. I started doing some very crude research online and browsing through Reddit threads. I was able to narrow down my ideas using a very simple matrix based on my interests and market demand. The idea I came to was something that could help other creatives and artists build their brand and grow their business. This week, I'll talk about a new tool I discovered to explore trending topics and how I narrowed down the customer segment I want to work with. So the tool I discovered this past week is called Exploding Topics, and what they do is they search through millions of searches that occur online, and they're able to summarize them and show what would be trending soon. This is how it looks like, and you can filter it by year and month. So I filtered to 1 year ago, so 2020. And what I did was I actually wrote down each of these topics. So here, each card is a topic, and it shows you number of searches it has per month and also the growth. And there's a lot of data here. But what I did was to at least have some way to synthesize and work with this data. I only went through the first page. So there's many pages, right? But I went through the first page and I looked at the ones that had, I think, more than 10,000 searches per month. And I wrote each topic onto a sticky note. And this is what I got from the first page. And I clustered them into what I thought was similar. And I summarized it with this sticky note. And here you see, I saw sort of trends of how everything was really being driven by us working from home, essentially from the pandemic. The pandemic really did change how we live. And here's a more granulated look of what I discovered. So there's this phenomenon where people are working from home and it leads to a change of lifestyle. So the things that people are searching up is air fryer, things like massage chair. And this kind of makes sense because you're staying at home, you're probably not sitting properly at your desk, and also you're probably craving, fried food, and you're also probably cooking more at home. The second category is this idea of being your own boss. So people, I think, are looking for alternative ways of making income. And this makes sense in the sense that maybe a lot of people are being laid off. They're not having enough income from their work. So YouTube Studio has been searched, and also OnlyFans. I think this was more than 13 million a month last year. For those of you not aware, OnlyFans is a platform for creators to create exclusive content, and they can provide it on a subscription model. It is dominated by sex workers, but there are other types of creators on there as well. So there's also chefs, there's entertainers, comedians, singers, all sorts of different people who are creating content. This was something I've never heard of QuadPay before, QuadPay, but this is driven by this idea of everyone now is tied on cash. So QuadPay is a way to purchase items in four installments that's interest free. So you can buy anything from any of stores. You can use it for buy clothes, buy shoes, and you can convert it into a four installment payment. And so this signals that people don't have cash on hand right away and they need a way to stretch it out a little bit. Google Lens. So I was a little bit surprised about this. So Google Lens is an app through your phone. You can scan objects and it can identify what it is. And I thought that was not enough of a reason for it to be really popular in 2020. And so I looked up the user reviews and I discovered that a lot of people actually use it for price matching. So say for instance, you're in a store, you find something you like, you can use that app and discover if there's other retailers or sellers who can provide a better price. That way you can check and maybe purchase it at a lower price. Google Lens is also really good for students, I learned. So I've seen some user reviews where they mention you could also use it to scan writing that's hard to read, and it can also translate it. So say for instance in language you understand, or maybe you're learning, you can translate it to your own language. I think that's really useful. So that makes sense because lots of students are now studying from home, and driven by this pandemic. And this sort of makes sense. So Brainly is another platform that really took off. It is a peer-to-peer community for remote learners, and it is a way for students to access each other and provide help. And this makes sense because I think a lot of people are missing out on the community aspect of learning. This was really important for me to have a good idea of what is happening and sort of what's on people's minds, because for me to then go into and talk about customers or potential people I want to target, I have to think about what's consuming their mind. So just looking at an analysis of this, essentially people are really looking for ways to, first of all, I think, find ways that are more secure ways of income. I think also people are looking for ways to connect. People are looking for ways that will ease physical pain or mental stress. And ways to cope, I think. So for me, this is kind of the overall trend I'm detecting. And so I think this is something I have to keep in the back of my mind as I'm thinking about the end customer. So when I was starting out, I had a list, and this is a list I came up with. So I said freelancers, artists, Etsy shop owners, content creators. So if I want to create something that would help these people grow their brand and their business, it has to be something that would stand out and is unique to them. And so this customer, like this list, is still very, very vague. It's not very specific. It's also very hard to work with. So I need ways to narrow it down more. And so this is something called, this is a book called Value Proposition Design, and I reference it quite often. They have something called a value proposition canvas, and essentially what this canvas does is identify customer segments and identifies products or services that would either help them create gains or eliminate pains. And so when you create a customer segment, you really first start off by figuring out what are their tasks or jobs. So for example, the task of someone, of people generally, to be able to live comfortably, to be able to sustain themselves and provide for their family, to be able to de-stress from time to time. So what are the things that needs to be done? So maybe, if you're a parent, you want to make sure your kids are fed, right? Going to school, getting the homework done, things like that. And pains are what would get in the way of that, and gains are things that they would create. It would create more experiences that it would be helpful. So I had a lot of challenges with trying to narrow down a customer segment because I had this very vague customer, this very vague idea of who I wanted to target, but then I didn't know how to narrow it down because I can go in any direction, right? I can think about specific mediums, specific type of artist. I can think about region, I can think about country. I really didn't know how to make it more narrow. And I realized I really had to take a leap of faith here and make a bunch of assumptions, and there's just no way around it. And so one thing I really want to point out I learned from this process is it's really more important to try out the ideas and fail and then move on than not move forward at all. Because I probably spent a couple days just like paralyzed. I think I was just lying on my bed and just like, I don't know what to do. I'm so scared of failing. I'm so scared of whatever I'm about to choose is not going to work out. I'm so scared of wasting my time. But then I have to go through that failure, or maybe not failure. I have to go through that and test it out and then figure out if it won't work. So I have to really pick a direction and just put all my faith in it. And so I decided to pick ceramists, so people who work with clay and create, with pottery. And this was really arbitrary, actually. I just thought maybe I'll just target them. I'll just think about them. I'll focus on them first. If this doesn't work out, maybe next one textiles. I don't know. This one doesn't work out. Maybe people who work on canvas and do oil painting. Just go through them at a time and then just learn something from it rather than not do anything at all. And so I went on Reddit again, and I Googled what are some of the, questions people might ask when they're looking to start a pottery business or trying to build one. What are just some budding questions they might have? Maybe they've been doing it for a little while. Maybe they want to pivot. And also it's important for me to consider, am I thinking about targeting people who are just starting out, or maybe they've already have a couple of years under the belt and they're sort of stagnant, right? So I don't know yet, but I really need to start somewhere and then just keep tweaking little by little. So here I was able to identify a couple of interesting things and help create a profile for a customer segment. And I started sketching this out. So this is from that book, right? And based on this thread alone and the conversations that was happening below it, I was able to identify a couple of things. So the first one was, when I looked at a couple of threads, it seems like everyone's really concerned about making a living out of it, which makes sense, right? And they're also feeling very financially insecure about it. They weren't sure if they can convert it into a career. They weren't sure, how to make it work. They really want to know more about the how. And when I think about other tasks they really want to do, they want to probably live a life that's a little bit more fulfilling and more interesting. So when I started writing this out, I was able to really put myself in their shoes and really try to understand what they're going through. And for me, this is a really good, very good starting point for me, because as I have this down, I can start modifying it and adding to it. So the other thing I did this week was I started looking through resources that could help me, because this process is quite new to me and I'm not going to pretend that I know what I'm doing. So I borrowed a couple of books, and what's nice about these books is I can kind of reference them while I'm working on the project. So this is a tip or tactic I really want to share, which is whenever you want to read something, read it while you're attached to scaffold it to a project. I noticed that when I'm reading something while I have a project I'm going through, I'm more likely to remember things and I'm more likely to be interested and invested, because I usually go to the book with a question. When you go to the book with a question, you're more likely to get more out of it. If you kind of just go through it just wanting to absorb knowledge, it doesn't work as well for me, I would say, and probably not for a lot of people as well. It's something I just want to share. So another interesting thing I came across is this book. So I think this is one of the most fulfilling aspects of being a creator or being a designer in general, is you really discover interesting things. I would never think to see this book unless I was working on this specific project. Ultimately, when you're working as a designer, you're really much thinking about culture and being embedded in it. I think this is the most fulfilling aspect of it. And you're really just stewing in it. I think that's amazing. So for me, I came across this book by accident as I was looking up Ceramis from Toronto, and she, I think, was featured in this book, perhaps, and she had it on her Facebook page. And then I came across this book, so I'm going to get my hands on it really soon. But this was a really exciting find for me, and I think this is one of the things that you just don't expect to come up when you're working on something. So that was a quick summary of my week, and I hope you learned something interesting. Please comment below, and I'll subscribe to stay up to date with more releases of the series. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.